This comes from a conversation that we had on one of these meetings nearly a year ago, not just a year ago, when it kind of sprung on us about the new Scottish fire regulations, and 3 or 4 people said I hadn't heard about this and all this sort of stuff. So I've been doing a wee bit of research, and this is basically to start a bit of a conversation under slightly more controlled conditions, if you know what I mean. This is my interpretation of the regs, of what's available in the market, and it's meant simply to start us all off so that we can have a conversation, basically. I am not offering fire safety advice. I am not offering building regulations advice or legal advice. I am not your lawyer. I'm not even operating purchase advice. This isn't even technical advice. Usually I'm quite happy to offer technical advice, but under this, because there's so much legal stuff involved, you're really on your own. This is just to start a conversation. So I'm making that perfectly clear at the start of this recording. Now, the existing provision in Scotland, and this is the existing provision across the whole of the country. If you're in England, this doesn't apply to you. The current Scottish regulations say that smoke detectors should be fitted. They can be either mains fitted, or they can have at least 1-year batteries, which is a PP3. They should be testable. The usual way of testing them is to run a small leakage current. And they should have a device to signal the end of battery life. So they should go peep, peep, peep just as the battery's about to die. And that's all the standard provision there is. However, after the Grenfell Tower disaster in London a couple of years ago now, there was moves made to improve the fire protection regulations in Scotland. They were originally supposed to be implemented a year ago, earlier in this year, but that was deferred because they were kind of dropped on people from above. Not only people like ourselves, but the industry, the installation industry only got to hear about it very late. There was no real consultation with people at the IET or whoever, and as a result, it was deferred, it was put back a year. So these are new regulations, and they come into force on February of next year. The new requirements are that you should have smoke detectors, which is what the initial, what everybody's already got in their house are smoke detectors. It also now includes heat detectors. Now, a heat detector is unaffected by smoke, but is affected by fire, by heat produced by a fire. And carbon dioxide detectors are now becoming mandatory as well. Just before I go on any further, that's what a carbon monoxide detector looks like. That was taken on my desk here yesterday. It costs about £20, comes from the usual suspects. It gives you the temperature, and then every 20 seconds or so it flicks over and gives you the current ppms of carbon monoxide, which is typically 0. You have to install one of these everywhere you have a fuel burning device. I'll explain that in a minute. I think I'll get the back of that as well, the next slide. There you are. Nothing very much to see. It's got a 10-year battery in it. It's a lithium CR2 battery, and it's designed to last 10 years. It's a tiny little microcontroller that sips a very, very low amount of electricity. It's quite fascinating design. Now, as part of the new requirements, smoke detectors and heat detectors must be interlinked. That means if one of them goes off, they must all go off. The idea is that if a fire is detected in any part of the building, all of the detectors should alarm to let you know what's going on. The carbon monoxide detectors, on the other hand, and I've put etc. The regulations go into great depth about other things. In communal living in houses of multiple occupation, there's other things that can be in there, but I'm really only concerned about our typical example is people that have got a house with a living room, halls, bedrooms, an office, a garage, stuff like that. So I'm not really caring about tremble pads and stuff like that. So carbon monoxide detectors and other equipment do not need to be interlinked, but they can be interlinked. They may be interlinked. These things can be mains or battery, but the regulation has changed that if you are going to make it run on a battery, it has to be a 10-year battery. Now, at that point, if you get something that's on a 10-year battery, at 10 years, you would be renewing the whole damn thing anyway. Because if you've got a detector, a smoke detector, there's 3 different types of smoke detector. There's optical smoke detectors, radioactive smoke detectors, and thermistor smoke detectors. And any one of those after 10 years would be worn out. So you'd be replacing the whole alarm, the whole part anyway, not just the battery. Smoke detectors, the regulation now states that you have to have a smoke detector in what I'm calling a living space. The regulation says that place in the building where people congregate. So I'm taking that as being the living room. And also in each passageway between rooms on each story. So if you've got a 2-story house and you've got a hall downstairs and a hall upstairs, that's 2 halls where people pass. So you need a smoke detector there. You need a heat detector in the kitchen. Smoke detectors are rubbish in kitchens because steam, toast, and my wife's cooking set them off with monotonous regularity. Carbon monoxide detectors, a carbon monoxide detector has to go into each room with a fuel burning appliance. Think gas fires, boilers are the 2 principal ones there. If you're all electric, you don't have to worry about a carbon monoxide detector. If you've got electric central heating and electric fires, CO isn't going to happen, so it's not going to be a problem. But most people tend to have either a gas boiler or a gas fire. I've got a gas fire that I'm replacing, and I'm replacing like for like. So I went to a local, very, very popular down here supplier of these things and said, look, I want the identical thing. The company has changed names, but they still make the same thing. I'd like you to take that old one because it's 30 years old out and put an identical one in. And the guy said, yes, here's a quote. And the quote included £25 for a carbon monoxide detector. And that was not negotiable. He cannot not put in a brand new CO detector with each gas fire that he puts in, just because that's now the regulations. They have to be tamper-proof batteries. You're not allowed to put an alarm in a bathroom for the simple reason, move that good-looking fellow over there. If you put an alarm in a bathroom, then the heat and or the steam will be continually setting it off. And they do recommend that you've got a garage that you put a heat alarm in there. Right? You're not particularly concerned in a garage you're going to have exhaust fumes which would set off a smoke detector. But if you have heat in the garage, that's going to be more likely a problem that a fire alarm wants to know about. What is not particularly clear in the regs is practically everybody on this conversation today has an office, a study, a playroom, if you like. And does that come under the initial one of places where people gather? You know, do you live in that room or do you not? Or is it just an office or is it just a study? So like all these regulations, they're subject to interpretation, which is how the legal people make their money. Other things to think and know about. For mains compatibility, if the mains connected, then you can run an extra wire to actually do the mains interlink, or you can buy mains, smoke detectors and heat detectors and so on that use a radio to speak to each other, even though they've got mains. They're mains powered, but they interconnect by radio. And I found at least 4, possibly 6 different radio standards. So if you decide to buy 2 from your local Rights hardware store, they might not work with something else that you've bought elsewhere, depending on the standards that they're talking. So it's a thing to kind of think about. If you're too close to your neighbour, then you could accidentally link to them. Imagine a block of flats and people are accidentally linking to their neighbour. You set these up the same way as you do, you know, the Wi-Fi where you press the button to connect something because it's cheaper than and easier than going in and filling in the IP address and all that stuff. It's done by press a button on both of them at the same time. But there is the possibility for what I call the Honeywell problem. And these are not fire alarms. These are fire warning systems for inside the house. If you have a fire alarm that contacts the local fire station or makes an alarm go off in the outside wall or whatever, this isn't that. And you may want to think about interlinking it to that. It may be that you've got a system like that that you want to make this work with. Your existing smoke detector might be connected to something like that, and you might have to make that work as well. Mixed tweets. This is another thing. The modern equipment has each of the different types of detector, and sometimes even the detectors in each of the different rooms has a different tweet. You know how when your thing, when you test it or when the battery is getting low and it starts going peep, 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 you don't know what one it is. What this does is each different one's got a different peep so that you know which one it is you're listening to. Some of them you get a little remote control handset so you can individually test or individually hush the devices as you go around about the house. And standards. There's a lot of stuff apparently out there, and it's come from China and it's got CE stamped on it because somebody's got a wee stamp that's got CE on it, and they do that with it basically. You wouldn't buy dodgy tires or dodgy brakes for your car. I wouldn't recommend buying dodgy equipment for this application either. So they're the relevant standards that you have to meet, you have to know about. The Scottish Government says that if you're going to do a self-fit with radio controlled devices without the mains, you can expect to pay £200, £220. It can go up to £3,000 if you want to get an electrician to come and raddle your walls and replaster and redecorate and all that groovy stuff. Our good friend Google brings up this. The industry is now prepared for it, and there's 220, 260, lots and lots of people starting to produce packs of this stuff. Brands you should know about. Fire Angel, my little carbon monoxide detector's a Fire Angel one. Echo another. Google Nest do one. Now the Google Nest ones, I do not know if they're compliant. I think they might be either Zigbee or Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi is not necessarily compliant because the Wi-Fi standards keep changing. The Wi-Fi that you're using today is not the Wi-Fi that you were using 10 years ago. And if you get a new, right now, we were talking earlier on about how there's lots and lots of streets getting dug up by telecoms companies. That's because telco companies are currently deploying what they call fibre to the pole, whereby you get fibre to the pole and it's only copper from the pole to your house. And once that happens, everybody's going to suddenly have an upgraded broadband experience. And when you start doing that, what your ISP will do is they'll send you a new router. And that new router will have much quicker Wi-Fi on it to accommodate the much better bandwidth you've got. And if your new router doesn't accommodate a Wi-Fi smoke alarm that you've got, you'll not even think about that. Because once you're installing smoke alarms, you do it, and then 30 seconds after you're finished it and put the ladders away, you forget about it. And you're certainly not going to think about it when you're thinking about your Wi-Fi infrastructure. So for that reason, I think Wi-Fi's not to be used for this. Also, Yale are another one, and KIDDE, K-I-D-D-E, were in here, but I don't know why they've disappeared. Suppliers. B&Q, Screwfix, Toolstation, all the usual suspects are there. However, I've put an asterisk next to each of them for the reason that these are all UK national brands, and this is a Scottish only, for the minute, regulation. As a result, B&Q, Screwfix, Wix, Toolstation, I've looked at their offerings for these, and it's all bog standard. This is the ACO, you know, GTFX 3572 or whatever it is. Oh, this is a Fire Angel 20. There's no saying, they're just offering random bits of kit. There's no saying that these bits of kit talk to each other, or that you can control them or mix and match them. So for that reason, if you're going to buy something from B&Q or Toolstation or Screwfix, please make sure that you check this stuff out. Go and make sure, read the packets, read the details, make sure that you're buying stuff that's all to the same standard as all the other stuff that you're buying. I have found 2 or 3 FireGuard Plus are actually really rather good. I'll show you theirs. The FireDetection Shop is an online shop, again, doing packets of stuff. I'll go through this in a minute. And the likes of ACO and Fire Angel and some of the better companies, Yale, Kid, have direct channels. You can actually go to the company's website and they'll either direct you to a reseller or they'll sell you the stuff themselves. That's FireGuard. And that's what they call their Scottish package. 197, call it £200. 3 smoke detectors, a heat detector, a carbon monoxide detector, and a remote control for testing and hushing round about the house. £200, fit and forget. How they attach, my existing smoke alarms are on a white bayonet fitting, so I can put my hand up or put a pole up, twist it, and it drops out, and I can work with it and put it back in. These are on round, like great big 6-inch diameter Velcro pads that you stick to the ceiling or you stick to the wall where it's appropriate, right? But at that money, it's not bad. The next one I find fascinating. Where are we? There, it's there. FireDetection Shop, another Scottish standard one. What that is a smoke detector. I should say, see that previous bundle, you can say you don't want the carbon monoxide detector and take £25 off of it, which takes the £200 down to 175. This is about the same, 184. And this is just the 3 smoke detectors and a fire detector. There's no remote controls or anything like that with here. However, how Fire Angel do it is they have a standard smoke alarm, which operates like the one that you've got now. And then they've got a little plug-in thing that is a CR2 battery, a little board 2 inches by 1 inch that plugs in, and that gives you the interlink facility. And this includes 4 of these. Now, these interlink facilities, the little radio modules that speak to each other, and I'm sure that right now, even as I say this, he's working out ways to put these on layouts. Wonderful wee things. But Fire Angel charge you £33 each for them. So that bundle there has got 4 of them at £33 each. That's 132 quid just for the RF stuff, right? But in that one, you could possibly change the RF, use a different RF, whatever it is, not use RF. If, for example, you've got a workshop and you want to just use one of these for local, over and above, if you're over and above your fire protection that you've got to meet for the fire standards, there's nothing to stop you having additional fire protection. If, for example, you've got a workshop or an office or a solder station or something like that you want to protect additionally. The implications: this is mandatory and it will be checked in any new buildings as part of getting your certification, getting a building warrant. It is mandatory and it will be checked for new and existing public buildings. So if you're in a public building, then this standard will be there, and it's exactly like the standards for putting in ramps and stuff, except for it's got to be done by February. And then HMOs are houses of multiple occupancy, which is if you've got a house with 4 students in it or 6 students in it, you have to have this in place and checked by February. There's no mention of any checks or visits for domestic installations. However, if you do have a fire and you don't have an installation like that, that would be a great excuse for your insurer to say, what? And similarly, if you've got a house and you're trying to sell it and there's somebody coming in to do one of these HIPS packs for selling your house or doing a survey for your house, they will look at that. That's an easy fix for them, an easy tick box for them. So you're really going to have a wee think about it. There's lots and lots of talk about what you have to do and when you have to do it. There is no mention yet of what the penalties or sanctions are going to be for non-compliance. At least I couldn't find any. So I'll leave that one open. There's the references, the British standards that apply to these things, and there's your jumping off point for the Scottish Government's pages on the matter if you want to read further. And we're done.
Yeah, I've recently got mine. I got them from Amazon. They had the Fire Angel ones, and they were actually on offer through Amazon. They're about £20 saving a unit. So again, it's coming in quite expensive, even for your 3 basic smoke. And the heat detector was coming in about £200.
Yeah, that's a bit ballpark at the minute, I think.
The other thing you can do is Fire Angel also do a device that you can connect for your phone. So within the house, you can use like a tablet to set them off and test them.
Mm-hmm.
And you get remote access if you're monitoring a relative who had them in a house that had Wi-Fi. You don't want to test them from remote, but you can find out if an alarm has gone off in their house remotely.
Yeah, as I said, that was the etc. part of that thing, whereby I thought, well, if I start getting into all these various options, I will be here all afternoon. But really, just wanted to do the basic set of 4.
You mentioned the electricians, but the thing is, last year I got my kitchen done up and I got them to put in the alarms as part of it. They did the heat alarm and the smoke alarms, and they were quoting at that time 200 to 300 to do the house wiring and putting them in because they're cheaper to buy than the ones with the RF on them. Yeah.
Is yours a modern house that it'd be fairly easy to run wire?
No, it's a 30s house, and they just ran the cables in the ceiling and between the rooms. And in fact, it was actually from Prestwick. I think it's Alan was the electrician.
Oh, I know.
And did a really good job, and it was cheaper than putting in another one.
Yeah.
Although in rental, if you rent houses or rent flats, this is a requirement. I would say I did it about 4 years ago. I got a rented place in Dunfermline, and I had to do that then.
Are your mains ones? Did they signal on the mains, or are they
signal on? No, I think there's a separate wire.
Separate wire, 4th wire.
It links them. I can't remember the trade name because they're made by EI in Shannon in Ireland. They've been at that game. I visited them in the 80s, and they were doing smoke alarms then. I just can't remember what the trade name is now, but they seem fine, absolutely fine. But it's not as expensive as what you think to go to an electrician.
Yeah. Also, a lot of us, it's much easier in terms of, we're not all fit for up and down ladders. Some of us have got very high ceilings. There's all sorts of, mitigating factors there. Absolutely.
There's one thing I was going to bring up about the RF side, because judging on the length of the antenna on the ones I've got, they're probably running at 868 megahertz.
Yes, they are.
And I've got a fire alarm system, a burglar alarm system rather, which also runs at 868 with its PIR detectors. And I have a horrible feeling they're going to fight, because the burglar alarm system actually has a tamper-proof radio receiver, which would go off if it thinks it's being tampered with from other 868 megahertz sources. And interestingly enough, when the two mobile phone towers started up on 4G in 2015, they're not too far away from my house, my burglar alarm went bananas. And I had to get the company in to turn down the sensitivity on the tamper-proof radio receiver. It was actually because of the RF from these 4G towers that was upsetting them.
Yeah, the frequency that I was quoted for looking at the standards for most of the alarm systems is 866.43 megahertz, which is close enough to 868 that it's well within the sideband, so that's going to be sport, shall we say.
Oh, yeah, but of course, when I say 868, that you're right, that covers a spread of frequencies
Absolutely.
and has multiple channels within, just as if you selected one of them, which is what the one they must be using. Yes.
Yeah. And then that's the other thing, that if you think about Wi-Fi, which is those sort of frequencies and slightly above, it sometimes has difficulties getting through walls. You don't want these things not getting through walls.
Well, I've got a modern timber frame house, so it's all stud persisting all the time. I don't have a problem with Wi-Fi signal penetration. I mean, that's running at 2.4 gigahertz, which is more difficult compared. 868 will get through better because it's a lower frequency.
Yeah, I've got a 2.5 foot long 8mm masonry drill for getting through some of the walls in this house.
Yes, you've got a different problem.
If I could come in briefly. Yeah, my system is Sentinel, and like others, I found the change in regs dropped on the mat last year. Only I got out and managed to get some, and I fitted a Sentinel system. It's connected with wireless. It has the long life batteries, and that was quite straightforward. It just needed up a short ladder to screw it in a suitable place. The problem you can sometimes have with the mains transmission using the ring mains is, if your house has more than one ring main, they very often kit that communicates doesn't communicate across the consumer unit. And I tried to use them to get from my house to my workshop building, my garage workshop, and they didn't work. So the Wi-Fi was the solution. The buildings are close enough, and they do work. You trigger alarm in the garage, and it triggers the lot. So that part works. I would quite like to have had a little remote to do the testing, though. That would have been handy.
Yeah,
but I got caught out. But it's installed in time, so there we go. If they change the regs, I shall shout at somebody.
Gordon has reminded me that when I said that you need to have a carbon monoxide detector in any room that has a fuel burning device, I mentioned boilers and gas fires. I had neglected to say gas cookers. Gas cookers are a fuel burning device as well, and that was remiss in me. I should have said that. Thanks, Gordon, for reminding me. That's appreciated.
A coal fire would be the same then.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And a wood burning stove.
Yep. Although you're less likely to get carbon monoxide poisoning off of those boys than you are off a gas fire, I think.
I know, it's still a requirement.
Yeah, absolutely. But still, as you say, you have to have it. The other thing that just occurred to me while Les was talking is, if you were to have a fire from an electrical device, like an electric fire or something that started off, one of the first things that happened would be that the mains would drop out. If there was an electrical short circuit as a fire started, then dropping off your mains, if your fire alarm is mains powered, could have interesting effects. I assume that the mains powered ones have to go off a separate spur to the consumer unit. You don't just spur them off a lighting circuit or a 30 amp ring mains or something.
Most of the mains powered fire alarms and detectors, Chick, have got a battery standby in them.
Yep, I would assume that, but that would also mean that you're going to have to replace these every 10 years anyway.
Probably, well, you'd probably replace them anyway because the sensors would fail.
Yeah, I say anything, 10 years, anything's going to be done. My own personal prejudice there wouldn't be to go for it as long as 10 years. I don't think I've had one up for it as long as 10 years, because certain parties have got me painting everything every 4 or 5 years, and every time you paint them, you might as well replace them.
Can I just come in a minute? I've just been to look at my fuse board. I got my house rewired 4 or 5 years ago, and the fire alarm detectors are on a separate fuse way.
Yeah.
And they have PP3, is it PP3 batteries in? PP9 batteries in?
PP3.
Which I have to replace every year.
Mm-hmm. I think you may find that those will have to be replaced by 10 years. I don't know if those standby batteries need to be replaced or not. If devices with 1 year standby batteries need to be replaced. But certainly all the way through the regs, it goes on about 10-year batteries, which is a bit tricky because I know a lot of the equipment, if you buy it from Radio Spares or Farnell, they only talk about 7-year batteries. That's a whole other discussion for somebody else.
I had fitted the Fire Angel ones, and they were very simple to fit and test. And I've got the remote control as well. What I found was that the in B&Q where I got them, what they had was cards up on the shelving. Obviously, they're expensive enough that they didn't want to have them just sitting out. And then you went and collected them. But collecting them, you know, the staff weren't quite sure what they were supposed to be getting. And, you know, it wasn't arranged in a way that they could easily find them. So, you know, they would bring one of the smoke alarms over and I'd say, well, it's not that one because that one's a mains powered one. That's an ordinary one. It needs to be the one that's interlinked. But once I got them all, you know, that was it. But I decided I need an extra one for the boys' room where they've got so much electronic equipment running. When I went back, they were supposed to have 2 in stock, but they couldn't find them. So I had to wait until the next order came in. And I think there was only a couple in the order. So I don't think they're getting very much in. I thought there would have been more given the new regulations coming in. So I think getting hold of them might be an issue.
Yeah.
Going back to the national company again, isn't it?
Yeah. How old are yours, Colin? How long ago was this that you were doing it?
I put them in a fortnight ago.
All right, that's cool. Yeah.
Or maybe 3 weeks.
The other good thing or thing to maybe point out to people, the Fire Angel one certainly is to link them, you need to press a button on one of them and set a button on another one.
Yeah.
And it's worthwhile having them all laid out on a table in front of you and setting them all to interlink before you fit them.
Yeah. How are they fitted to the surface? Are these the round Velcro pad things?
No. The Fire Angel ones are screwed, but you can fit them onto like magnetic bases, and you can buy magnetic bases that you stick to the ceiling and what have you.
Yeah.
But that doesn't help if you've got rippled ceilings or Arctic ceilings.
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, I really like the bayonet fitting.
Yeah, they are bayonet. Yeah, the units themselves are bayonet onto a base.
Aye.
You screw the base or fix the base to a magnetic.
Yeah.
The Sentinel ones I fitted have got that idea where you screw the base to the wall and it's a bayonet fitting to separate them, and the on-off switches and frequency switches on the inside. So you can, even if you've fitted your mounts, you can take them all together in one place to set the harmonize them all onto the same frequency. But the Sentinel instruction was quite easy to follow, and that was one of the first things they said was gather them all together on the bench, set them up and make sure they're all working correctly, and then install them wherever you're going to put them. And there was advice about where and when you should use heat alarm versus smoke alarm. So I would say that the Sentinel devices are it's a well presented package, and it went together quite easily.
Which is
You've got a clarification check. In your living room, if you've got a gas fire, do you need both a heat and a smoke detector?
You need if you're in your living room, if you've got a gas fire, you'll need a smoke detector and you will need a CO detector. That's it.
Yeah.
You don't need a heat in the
Something else that's coming along, it's in new builds at the moment, is carbon dioxide in bedrooms, because houses now are so sealed that if you've too many people in the one room, they're using up too much oxygen and you end up with too much carbon dioxide. So, and they're £100 each.
Can I ask if there's a if you know if there's a government limit of number of people allowed in a bedroom at any one time?
200.
And why would
Not
you
yet, but
expect
there
me to
probably
know
will be.
something like that?
Do you not need a private entertainment license for that one? Phil?
Homes of
I'm
multiple
asking for a
occupancy.
friend.
Aye,
It's always asking for a friend, isn't it?
absolutely. Aye. Everything that happens on Zoom stays on Zoom.
One
I'm
other
surprised-
thing
I'm
about the
surprised there's the worry about carbon dioxide in schoolrooms, though, because surely they would have to be designed to meet building regulations for ventilation anyway.
Yeah, for when the schoolroom was built, and some of them were
Yeah.
built in 1932.
Well, maybe the old ones it is a bit out of date, but modern buildings. I mean,
But-
when I
Even the
built this house
ventilation-
20 years ago, part of
Even
it
the
was
ventilation in modern buildings is
ventilation.
But what happens though is you get an old but perfectly serviceable school, and what they do is they built it in 1950, say, and then in 1990 all the windows are rotten, so they put modern sort of triple glazed plastic windows in that don't allow as much ventilation. Whereas before that it was old, rather leaky single pane glass windows with big swinging sections, and now the old building is becomes stuffy because of these new windows. So it's actually my own personal opinion is it's somebody doing something in order to be seen to be doing something, but that's a whole personal prejudice that I'm not getting into anymore. Anyway, time I think is pushing on, Davey. It's 3:30.
Check just one last thing. One of the things with the Fire Angel ones, I don't know about the others, is that you can interlink up to 48 different devices, whether it's alarms, remote controls, heat alarms, etc.
Yeah.
So
some of them are there's, like I say, there's half a dozen different standards. I've seen standards that go from 12 devices as linkable through 48, 72 and 256 were all options. So I take it that each different standard has got a different protocol, which is why I was kind of saying, please be sure that all the devices you buy have the same protocol for the RF, probably from the same man. If you buy two different devices from the same manufacturer and a different protocol, then that manufacturer is going to say, "Aye, well, okay, you made a mistake with our kit," and they'll replace one of them. Whereas if you buy a Fire Angel and an Echo and they won't talk to each other, and Echo's going to say, well, buy more Echoes, and Fire Angel are going to say, buy more Fire Angels. So you have to make sure that if you want to get things to speak to each other, that they've got the same standard and the same protocol for the interlinking.